Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Kubernetes SIG Azure meeting. This is March 6th, 2019. This is a meeting that is recorded on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say, and also please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. So we've got a few agenda items for today. Well, first off, I've popped a link in the chat for the agenda itself. So if you're at the meeting, please pop into the agenda, just write down your name that you're attending. And if you've got any topics that you want to discuss, feel free to pop them on the agenda too. These meetings are usually short and sweet. So the first one I have seen is that we're looking at the project board for backlog grooming. Dave, I think that you might have put that up. So if you want to take that away. Or maybe it was Craig. Was it Craig?
Wasn't me. So it's a great idea.
Yeah, I was just trying to come off mute here. Computer's acting up. No, I don't think I was one that added that there, but.
Well, maybe I did and I don't recall.
Well, I am crazy impressed. The project board is actually way larger than it used to be. It's actually well filled out and scoped. So if anyone has been working on some of the items that are on the project board and want to check in about what you've been working on, feel free to.
Unfortunately, I'm still in the car and cannot walk through it. The traffic in San Francisco is crazy bad with the rain.
Yeah, all good, all good. Let me, let's do this. I will share my screen. And can you all see that okay? Yes, no, maybe so.
Looks good.
Cool, awesome. So it looks like a lot of movements happening in cluster autoscaler, or a few issues have been put up for cluster autoscaler, and support around newer versions of AKS with autoscaler. Node labeling, VMSS support, availability zones. And then a lot of these seem to be issues around moving cloud provider forward, out of tree cloud provider forward. So I know, Rita, maybe do you want to speak a little bit about the end-to-end test work that you've been doing?
Yeah, sure. So for Kubernetes, as you know, we have like a pre-submit Linux job, proud job already out there. We are using it for PRs, and there's obviously the Windows one as well. And then as far as like cloud provider, Azure, I'm updating that to use kubetest. It's currently using its own like custom script. That's a work in progress.
Okay, I know that was like written in Perl or something, right?
Yeah. And we're trying to like make sure we have a consistent way of running all of these jobs. Okay. That's what we're doing right now. Yeah.
And are you exploring kind by any chance for the provisioning?
No, not that I know of. No.
Okay, all right. Because I know there was some talk about potentially leveraging kind for the images that are used in test infra. So maybe look at chatting with Ben about that, Ben Elder.
Okay, yeah. Well, once I'm done like getting it using the same process, and then I'll look into that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks.
All right. So update on my side, we've been working on migration of the Azure Disk CSI and Azure File CSI drivers from Andy's repos into Kubernetes SIGs or Kubernetes CSI, so that they're official drivers. There was a little bit of slowdown there, just Kubernetes owners churning through their own backlog. So that is seemingly cleared up now. Looks like Nikita has access to admin access to Andy's repos. So she is going through the verification process of some of the collaborators who have contributed, make sure that the CLAs are in check, that the repo is actually adhering to Kubernetes standards, so it has like contributing documents, readmes, it's properly labeled, it has appropriate access for Kubernetes contributors as well before that migrates over, as well as doing some cursory checks on the license and dependency management toolchain before getting that over. So we run in the background something called FOSSA, which is a open source license and dependency management scanning tool. So we're able to, I won't say fairly easily, but that's kind of what we're moving towards. So there's a licensing subproject in SIG release. Myself, Nikita, Dims, and Steve Winslow, who is one of the legal dudes from Linux Foundation, are the subproject owners for that. So what we're looking at doing eventually is being able to turn on FOSSA across all of Kubernetes to enforce licensing checks for repos, right? So right now it runs passively and occasionally and doesn't enforce any checks, but we're able to use that data at least to kind of message whether or not a repo is good enough to adheres to the license requirements for the CNCF. So that I'm hoping will be wrapped up by the end of the week, hopefully. If not, I'm going to keep pressing. I know that's one of the things that are top of mind for Locky as well. That's all I have on the board personally, and it looks like most of the things are end-to-end. Most of the things active are end-to-end or out of tree related. So I think I will be in, I don't know how many of you are based in San Francisco, but I'll be in San Francisco next week, or I'll be in California, period, next week. The first part of the week for the Open Source Leadership Summit, we're doing a panel for that. And then Friday, I'll be at Microsoft with Locky. So if any of you are in Cali and want to sync up, let me know. The next thing on the agenda, I believe, is, there we go, is CAPC progress, right? So in the background, we have been working on, myself, Tarek, and Nick Lane have been working on getting CAPC to a point where we can open it up to contributors, and then also getting it to some baseline expectation of like, this is a cluster now, right? So immediately before this meeting, I was doing a demo with Nick and Tarek to kind of show off that we actually can build it from master now, right? And there are some baseline things that happens. It will create a load balancer standard, public IP standard, Nick the control plane, connect the backend pools and all that good stuff, and stand up a 113.4 kubeadm cluster, right? So that is pretty exciting news. Okay, so that's pretty exciting news. I want to show off the
That is cool.
yeah, I'm going to show off the backlog a little bit. So prior to that meeting, last night and earlier today, I cleaned up some of the things that we need to be working on, filed issues for some of the stuff. And so if anyone is actually interested in working on cloud provider, cluster API provider, Azure, we're getting to the point where we can actually open it to contributors. So I would love people to challenge the documentation, poke at it from the Microsoft lens, and start to say like, this is just like not technically sound, or you should do this instead. So would love people to jump in and take a look at that. So some of the things that I have on my plate to is make sure that there are a few bugs in the logic for reconciling the backend pools for the load balancers and the public IPs against NICs. And those are the things that once those are done, I'll be able to say that like master actually builds and builds consistently. I also want to document, so I've started documenting the developer workflow. So how to actually get involved, that is listed as urgent to me. And so a few things that we're working on here. I've captured a bunch of the known issues for the repo and have started checking them off. They also have their own issues attached to them. So let me link that in the chat. And all right. So these are all available as issues if anyone is interested in starting to work on any of the CAPC stuff. Have a little extra bandwidth in your schedule and you're interested, let me know. Some of the things that we're looking at investigating longer term, support for availability zones across the board. Right now, there's some parts of the logic that hard codes against zone 3. And it also makes the assumption that you will be using an Azure region that supports availability zones. So moving forward, we need to write logic that can intelligently figure out what availability zones are available in that region, whether or not you're in a region that supports availability zones, what availability zones are available. So, you know, design-wise, I went with load balancer standard because of the support to attach virtual machines that are availability zone virtual machines into the load balancer. I think that you can only do that with load balancer standard, if I'm correct, but I've got a bunch of Microsoft people on, so if I'm wrong, let me know. All right, cool.
I think Rita would have said something.
Sorry, you mentioned standard. I please repeat.
Yeah, sure. So right now, in trying to get us to a point where it's actually working and it like master 1 passes all of the tests and then also stands up a cluster, I made the decision to 1 hard code availability zones. So they're all pinned to zone 3. But also to be able to use availability zone virtual machines, I believe that you need to use load balancer standard and pip standard.
Right, that's right.
Okay, cool. Right. So I want to do some deeper investigation in like what is required to support it across multiple regions and availability zones. So probably write logic that figures out what region you're in, whether or not you support availability zones, error out there. And then if you're in a region that does support availability zones, have some logic that will do some even spreading of the machines that get spun up in the cluster, so that you're not all sitting in one zone. And then, later on, I'd also like to look at moving to virtual machine scale sets. I know that there are, so when I was working on Tectonic for Azure, so I wrote a decent chunk of the Tectonic for Azure logic. I know there's a difference in the virtual machine API and the virtual machine scale sets API, where it makes it tricky to reach into a scale set and like have the identity of a machine, essentially. So based on what has been built in Cluster API so far, a lot of it is targeting using the machine API as opposed to machine list, machine set, machine deployment, right? That said, I think machine sets would probably be analogous to what a virtual machine scale set would be, but it would still need logic to reach into the scale set and understand the machines and action on one machine as opposed to the scale set. So in the interim, I made the decision to not look at scale sets. Like I was like, that is a harder problem to solve, and I think that maybe we might not be in the place in Cluster API overall to solve that yet. So trying to chunk down the things that we can deal with right now. But you can see there's there's a lot of fun to be had, right? So again, if anyone is interested in jumping in, picking something up, or you know people, what I would love to see are people who are interested in writing tests. So if there's anyone that you can think of that might be interested in writing tests for this repo, let me know. And then, okay, so SIG cloud provider consolidation. So since the instantiation of SIG cloud provider, there was an eventual goal that the SIGs that were cloud provider centric would eventually bend the knee to SIG cloud provider, right? So we have been in discussions about, can I share that? Can I share that? I think I can share that. Actually, I'm not sure I can share it just yet. But we've been in discussions about like what it's going to take to consolidate under it. So Zoom channels, so Zoom accounts, Slack channels, what the cloud provider repos would be named going forward, what the sub-projects would be named, who owns them, how to redefine some of that, what we have to do on the label side, what we have to do on the communication side, if there's anything we have to do on the GitHub automation side, right? So trying to drive down a lot of those little nitty things. So that proposal is almost complete, and I think we're planning on presenting it to steering committee at the end of the week. We're just giving a few more people time to review it. So that's coming soon. What that means for these meetings in the future, I don't know yet. I would like to, I would imagine that each provider would like to continue meeting. I think that part of what this does is gives us an opportunity to build consistently the way all providers are, and so working on things like out of tree provider, working on things like the cloud provider docs, making sure that everything is done consistently across all providers, and then also one of the big draws of it is preventing SIG sprawl, right? So every new provider who comes up doesn't have to say like, hey, we want a SIG because we're a provider and we're important, right? If we were to enumerate all of the potential providers, I don't think that it would necessarily be a valuable use of time for the project, right? So that's coming soon. I think that there were some thoughts about making it happen towards KubeCon Shanghai, and I kind of think that we should push that out a little bit. So some of the discussion was also around how do we present provider changes, right? So how often do people present at the community meetings? Who gets KubeCon? Who gets KubeCon sessions? Things like that, right? So because Barcelona and Shanghai are coming up so soon, I kind of said like, hey, we should not make a decision, or like whatever decision we've made about provider sessions right now needs to stand, right? Because like people have already submitted proposals around these tracks. So the soonest we can make a change there is for San Diego, KubeCon San Diego, right? But yeah, so that's in flight right now. As I have more details, I'll let you all know. I will stop talking now. We've got 7 minutes left. If people have questions, comments, concerns, things that they want me to track down for them, let me know.
Hey, I'm also going to introduce myself. I'm Nicholas Lane, and I'm one of the maintainers of CapZ, along with Stephen and Tarek, sorry. But just want to say hi.
Hi, Nick. Hey. So anybody else? I think everyone knows everyone here. If anyone wants to introduce themselves, is new to the call, I see 2 names I have not seen before. So if you want to just shout out, say hi, what you're here for, what you're looking to do, if we can help you in any way, go for it.
Hey, it's Becker. I'm from PTC. Actually, we are thinking we were using Gardener project for our Kubernetes, for provisioning our Kubernetes cluster on Azure. And now we are thinking about moving into AKS, and we are kind of interested in how we can start contributing to the either upstream issues about Azure or just AKS engine or anything about AKS, because we will be hosting quite many clusters on AKS more likely. So I just wanted to get warm up for the team. Quite a bit crowded team here. So that's why I'm joining actually.
Welcome, welcome. So a large amount of the people on this call, or yeah, majority of the people on this call are from Microsoft. So this is definitely the place to come get help.
Yeah, hi, it's Heba here. I work for Microsoft as well, for a commercial software engineer department. Just joined Microsoft less than 1 year ago, and my tech line is application platform, so it's mainly Kubernetes and container stuff. And I'm trying to dig more into how can I contribute to to the project.
Welcome, welcome. So next time around, I'm going to do I'll do the intros at the beginning instead of losing them for the end. But yeah, so I think that there have been discussions about like what's the appropriate AKS communication platform. I've noticed that like a lot of the Microsoft people have come to hang out in SIG Azure, the SIG Azure Slack channel within the Kubernetes workspace. So that's been awesome in terms of like just general support and having a lifeline into Microsoft there. I would like to see, I would love to see like more interaction. I would love to see eventually something of a roadmap. I don't know what people are willing to share on the Microsoft side, but it would be cool to have a public roadmap that we can kind of tie together with a Kubernetes project. So I know that sorry, go for it.
That's definitely I was just going to say that's on my plate, and it's in the works. Stay tuned.
Awesome. All right, so that's all I've got personally. If anyone wants to shout out what they've been working on or questions for me, go for it.
Yeah, so I know we had this discussion offline a little. We're kind of the Kubernetes SIG Azure Slack channel of what that will become. Talking with Paris, they would almost like seeing that not be a support channel. And I think that goes across all cloud providers, that it's more just for SIG Azure related stuff and not a support forum for cloud providers. I don't know if you heard any more on that or.
Yeah, so part of that proposal is actually a discussion around the delineation between so the first part of the consolidation was, do we consolidate into a working group or do we consolidate into a sub-project, right? I think that sub-projects are more appropriate because sub-projects by definition own code, and we have code that we need to own, right, within the Kubernetes orgs, right? So that's part of it, right? The second part of it is they've recently, they're working out the details for a new organizational group called user groups, right? So user groups would eventually be the place where if people wanted to organize and talk about a thing, whatever that thing may be, if it has the requisite amount of interest, I think they would be willing to spin up a user group. I know so Justin Santa Barbara was saying that, on the AWS side, there has been, they kind of have two modes of communication, right? One is the SIG channel, and then there's also, I think there's like a user group-ish channel, right? So his want is to be able to organize people in the right places. Right. My thought was, if we have people going to two places, right, the conversation kind of gets disconnected. I think that the argument can be made that users, there's no one definition of a user, right? I am an end user of Azure, but I'm also chair for Azure. I'm also developer. I'm also a product manager, right? And and people will fall into a bunch of like different buckets like that. I'm not sure that like having separate channels for that is the best use for moderator time. The channel is, I think that's probably the funny enough, naming is one of the final points of contention that we're working on for like across the board, because everyone loves a good bike shed, and then also what we do with the channels, right? So that is TBD, right? If it's going to be like a provider Azure channel, right, or a platform Azure channel, right, where it can be both the user discussion and Kubernetes specific interests, right, for development chatter. So the short version is we don't know yet. And I think we'll start to see it a little bit better once we button up the proposal and present it to steering. So stay tuned for that. That was a long-winded way of me saying I don't know yet. All right, well, we are at the half. Thank you, everyone who came. Are there any last questions, comments, concerns, things? All right. Well, again, thank you for coming. Take it easy. See you on the interwebs.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
All right.